I've worked for UKTI delivering their services for a very long time. In 1995, I answered an advert to an exhibitions consultancy, and it was described to me as a hand-holding exercise, taking British companies to overseas trade fairs. Was that something I thought I could do? I jumped at the chance. And for 10 years, that's what I did. And across many, many different industry sectors. So there was beauty and cosmetics, leisure and tourism, hotel catering, metals, metallurgy. What else did I do? Plastics and packaging, building and construction, all different places around the world. I guess my one claim to fame was that I got to take the first ever British group to Kazakhstan in 1995, when the capital was still down south in Almaty. And come on in, love. Come on in, have a seat. And that was very, very interesting. It was just at the point when the president had dissolved government and had announced that he was moving the capital to a little town up in the north that was called Astanka. And then he announced he was changing the name to Astana, which means rising star. And he was taking control of the country. So that was a very interesting experience. A few years later, there was a change in the funding, and unfortunately I was made redundant. But I knew I wanted to continue working alongside UKTI, and the role of an international trade advisor came up in the West Midlands. So I applied for it, went through all of the hoops, the interviews, the assessment days, and was delighted to be offered the position. Now, I don't know how many of you are in the West Midlands and know of an area called the Black Country. No. It sounds great, great, great. If you know it, I want to hear about it. The Black Country is an area west of Birmingham, south of Manchester. It covers Walsall, Wolverhampton, Dudley, West Bromwich, those kind of areas. And there's a couple of different reasons why we call it the Black Country. Somebody says it's because Queen Victoria was travelling through on her train, and the smog and the dirt in the air from the factories and the foundries, she said, oh, this is a black country, close the curtains. Other people say that it relates to the coal seam under the ground, and there is a strong history of mining in the area. Whatever it is the pulse of manufacturing, metal bashing, as we call it locally. But it's also got a very diverse creative industries sector. Those of you who know anything about glass and cut glass, Stourbridge in the south of the Black Country was historically the home of cut glass in Britain, right up until recent years when I left school a few years ago. And what happened then was that mass manufacturing has gone out to China, but the bespoke designer makeup items, the single pieces that cost hundreds of pounds rather than many, many pieces that cost a couple of pounds, are now made in Stourbridge. And that is really, really good. So I get to work with all sorts of different clients. So my role now, I work less across industry sectors, more in a regional, so Wolverhampton, Walsall, Dudley and West Bromwich. But anything can cross my plate. I'm working with companies that are foundries. I'm working with card manufacturers and designers. I'm working with glass manufacturers, designer makers. I'm working with people that make chains for industry, catering equipment. So my job is very, very diverse, but across a small area of the UK. Now, somewhere here, I've got a little widget that moves us on a bit. So my role is to work with companies strategically to help them look long-term and then make short to medium-term plans and decisions and carry them through. Do a review. Where did we want to? Where did we start from? What's our goal? And where are the steps to get us there? And is that goal a realistic goal? Is that goal achievable? Is that goal going to change? Because 90% of goals do. We all know that when you set off and you have your aim, that actually you might be just a couple of degrees north or south of that when you actually get to where you want to go. So what we do as a team across the West Midlands, we're based in the Chambers of Commerce, which is different. The rest of the country, their teams work, some of them work out of a single building. Some of them are what we call field-based, so they work from home but work across one industry sector. So the best place to find details of your local international trade advisor are on our website, and details of that will come up later, but basically it's ukti.gov.uk. So yes, we work on a one-to-one basis with companies. We give advice, we give support, we give help to make a strategy. The support that we offer can be advice, it can be financial, it can be educational, because there are lots and lots of information. There is lots of information available, not only on the internet, but through our specialists overseas. I don't use the word expert, because X is a has-been and spurt is a drip under pressure. So I never claim to know everything. We have specialists around the world who know about their countries. They work in the embassies, in the consulates, and in the high commissions. They know the language, they are from business. They are there to help you find the right clients that you need to find in their country. That's how they connect with us. And it's very, very easy for us to put you in touch with any of those clients overseas. At the back here today, we've still got some of my colleagues from overseas still here. They've been one-to-one meetings all week. To get on a train and come to Birmingham and meet somebody from Germany or Russia or Brazil or Australia or America for 20 minutes free of charge, that is one of the services that comes under the advice and support from UKTI. And it's here at the NEC Spring Fair every year. So if you didn't manage to make use of it this time, keep it in mind that next time you want to be at the front of the queue when it comes to booking your appointments with those advisors, because they will tell you what it's like to work in their country. They will tell you what it's like to do the importing or exporting to their country, what the tariffs are, what the issues are. There's a no-holds-barred approach to telling you the reality of trade with that country. And sometimes no, although it hurts, is the right answer. There are many ways that we can work with a company. We have programs, we have seminars, and we can do a one-off interaction with you to help you in with a specific query. These are called significant assists. And we do have our customer surveys that come round afterwards, about 6 months afterwards, and ask you, how was that? How did you get on with that particular question that you had or issue that you had? So it might be you've had your products held in customs and you need help getting them out. It might be something specific. Or it might be that you want to know the details on what are your IP risks. If your intellectual property is not secure, then you're giving away your earnings for the next 20 years. If you take a product out overseas and you haven't managed to secure your intellectual property, or you haven't understood fully the implications of agreeing exclusivity for a contract for somebody to work with you overseas, to be your agent or your distributor. These kind of issues, we've got specialists that we can bring in and sit and talk with you. Now, everything we discuss with you is completely commercial in confidence. We are bound not to repeat our conversations, except perhaps to our colleagues. Because if you want to get your products overseas, you need us to be talking about you to our colleagues. And that's what we're quite happy to do. We need your acceptance of that. So you would be asked, do you agree for marketing purposes? But certainly, the significant assistance can come in many varieties of ways. Now, I'm going to skip one on that list there, and I'm going to go to the passport to export. In fact, I'm going to go straight to the bottom, because that's where you start on a ladder, isn't it? You start at the bottom. Incubate for export. These are seminars where you will join a lot of other companies in your area, wherever you're based in England or the UK, to learn about how UKTI can work with you to help you develop your company, to grow your business overseas. They're free to attend, I believe. And they happen round about once every month. And again, you can find details of them on our website. The passport to export program is the next step on, and that's when it gets really exciting. That's when we not only unveil the cake, but we cut a slice out of it and say, right, okay, where are we going to start with this exporting? We can bring in an advisor, and I'll go into detail a little bit later. In fact, I'll go into detail now. We can bring in an advisor from the Export Market Research Scheme. She will do what we call a market selection with you, a review with you, to look at which countries are actually going to be right for you. Because there will be some countries where your product is not appropriate, is not used, or actually could be on their list of no-nos. There was a problem with the USA a few years ago when Mr. Bush had very high tariffs on British luxury goods. That's all sorted now, thankfully. But certainly, looking at that, having a market selection review, which is free, takes about 2 hours. You sit and you talk about what's important to me. Is it having a country where people speak English? Is it important having a country where they have gardens? Because if you're selling garden products, there are some countries where gardens just are a luxury that the very few can afford. What about disposable income? What about corruption? We are realists in what we do. We're not pretending that the world out there is an easy place. There are countries where there is a high level of corruption. There could also be a high level of bureaucracy, which is a completely different thing. So looking at that will then give you a chart showing which countries are easy, with a large potential, which countries are easy with a lower potential, and then you have the difficult countries. So some of your difficult countries, they might have your biggest potential. But if you're a new exporter, you don't really want to start off in a hard country. You don't want to start off where it's going to be really difficult. Sometimes the best places to start are closest to home. Has anybody got a clue which country we export to that we export more than the combined exports to Brazil, Russia, India and China? Which country has more exports? Ireland. Hey, I haven't got any gold stars, but you get them all. Well done. Ireland, we know them. Same time zone, same language. They drive on the same side of the road. We go to Dublin on holiday, or we might go further afield in Ireland on holiday. Ireland has more exports from Britain, whether they are fifth or sixth. They've just the list has just shuffled. Our biggest export market is America. Americans don't speak English. They speak American. It's different. They don't measure in the same way that we do. Height is in meters. Distance is imperial. It makes it just very, very interesting to get your head around. There are also 53 different states in America, which are equivalent to 50-odd different countries. So America, some people say, yeah, we want to break into America. I would gear you more towards Ireland first, and then possibly the Scandinavian countries, depending on your product, or the Netherlands. I worked with a company that produced cards for the Caribbean community, Afro-Caribbean community. And whilst, there was a couple of visits that were made out to the Caribbean, actually their first market wasn't the Caribbean. Their first market was Netherlands. So it's looking at the underlying trend of the country and where you want to go. My advice with my companies is, well, let's get a few smaller countries under your belt. Let's build your confidence. And then when you start going to the bigger countries, you can say, well, yeah, hey, I already do. I already export to Belgium. I already export to Luxembourg. You might get somewhere in Switzerland. And you might get somewhere in Scandinavia. You might get somewhere in Ireland. And you think, okay, once you get your first export order and you deliver it successfully, and then you get your next export order and you deliver it successfully, and then you might find yourself an agent or a distributor, and you're thinking, I can do this. And that's when your confidence is enough to then say, right, okay, where do I start to eat this elephant that is America or Brazil or Russia? Australia is a different issue because of the time. Because when they are working, we are sleeping. So you've got very little time zone there. So let's start again at the bottom of this list and go through these. Masterclasses. In the West Midlands, we will offer companies on our Passport to Export programme 3 masterclasses free of charge. I don't know what the other areas in the country do. They do it differently to us. But our masterclasses are all export related. So if you've got questions, you're in a room with other people in a similar position to you, and they want to know about trading online. They want to know about the issues about appointing agents or distributors. They want to know about logistics. How do you use social media? What are the differences with social media in different countries? Because some will use it, some won't, and some just think it's there and ignore it for the rest of the time. So the masterclasses are excellent value. Trade missions. We've heard of trade missions. The Prime Minister takes trade missions. Nick Clegg takes trade missions. Lord Green, our former Minister for Trade, and Lord Livingston will be taking trade missions. We also do smaller trade missions. We do trade missions of a dozen small companies where we go out to a country and we work with the team at the embassy or the consulate to get some networking done, to get briefings for you. When I went out to Kazakhstan, we actually had a closed briefing because the situation in the country was changing from being a Soviet satellite state to being an independent market, and there were things that we needed to be told that weren't actually for local ears. So depending on where you go, depends on what you'll be told. But trade missions are a very, very useful way of dipping a toe into a market with the safety net of having an international trade advisor go with you, with other companies doing something similar to you or perhaps from the same part of the world as you, going with you. So you can have your meetings in the day and then you can come back and you can say to your buddies over dinner in the evening, say, how do you find these people? What do you think? Isn't the traffic awful or scary? Cairo, scariest place in the world for traffic. So those are the kind of benefits of getting on a trade mission. And then there's a bit of financial support afterwards. Market visit support is where we send you off on your own. There you go. You want to go to Los Angeles. You want to go to a trade fair in Los Angeles in 6 months' time. Yes, we can support you to do that. There is some criteria about that. You mustn't already be exporting there. You mustn't have a local representative. But yes, we can do that. I've skipped the trade access program. When I started, I mentioned about taking British companies to overseas trade fairs. That is now through the Trade Show Access Programme. They've changed the name about 6 times in the last 18 years. But basically, it's having a UK pavilion at an overseas show with the support of somebody and other people around you. So you'll have your own stand, you'll meet your buyers, you do your sales, you'll get your products out there, but then you will have a network. You'll have a safety net of somebody with you. And if they can, they will make arrangements for you to have a briefing at the embassy and to have visits and to do other things as well overseas. And there is financial support for that. And I have to say, with the financial support that the government have offered, it's trebled in the last 12 months. We're no longer talking £1,000 here or £1,000 there. We're actually saying that the first time a company exhibits in a group in one of our high-growth markets, which are the 20 high-growth markets, including the BRICS and the civets. Anybody heard of the civets? Oh, that was Colombia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Egypt, Turkey, and South Africa. There's a new acronym just come out, which is MINTS, and I give up with that one. They're after dinner, and I haven't learned what that one is yet. But for those high-growth markets, the first time a company exhibits with a UK group, that funding rebate is £3,000. Now, that is at least 50% of the cost of a stand, because exhibition organisers, they're not listening, are they? You know that how much they charge you for a stand, and overseas is no different. And sometimes when you walk into your stand and you think, I've paid how much for this? And I'm the one that's got to dress it. I'm the one that's got to make it look gorgeous. Yeah, that's hard. So we do appreciate how much effort goes in to getting your stands up and running. And therefore, the government has said, let's give them some more money towards the cost of exhibiting. The Export Market Research Scheme goes slightly differently. It's like going on a market visit, but you're not out there to sell. You're out there to actually ask the question, how? Now, I describe exporting as a little bit like 5 bottoms on a bench. You've got the W's, you've got 5 W's. Why? Why do you want to export? Where do you want to export? What do you want to export? When do you want to export it? Because you definitely don't want to go to Hong Kong and China now because they're on holiday, and they will be on holiday for a month. Similarly, you don't want to go to the Middle East during Ramadan or Eid. So it's knowing when, and then there's the who. Who is it that you want to meet when you go into there? And that is all underpinned by the how, which is the bench. So that's your 5 bottoms on a bench. Export Market Research Scheme is your how. How do I get my product or my service into this country? Do I need an agent? Do I need to be registered? If you're offering training in Barbados, you need to be registered with the accredited council before you can even begin to offer your services. So this is a program that is delivered separately from us, gives you a great lot of support, of financial support, but also advice on going to make a visit to a country with a plan, with a schedule, where you say, this is when I'm going, this is my goal, these are the people I want to meet, these are the questions I want to be asking them. Because you need to be asking similar questions of similar organisations in order to be able to do a fair comparison when you get back. You can't compare apples and bananas. They're fruit, but they're totally different. So if you've not asked similar questions of similar organisations, making a comparison to judge them is very difficult. So the Export Market Research Scheme will give you 50% back towards the cost of interpreters. They'll give you 50% of your flight. They'll give you an allowance towards subsistence, which is something that the rest of us can't offer you, because it works on the basis that if they weren't supporting you, you wouldn't be going out to that country to ask, how do I get my product here? And potentially grow your business, take on somebody else, reduce the unemployment, increase our exports. That's what the government wants. We've been asked to solve the economic situation. Not much pressure. But it's great fun while we do it because we get to meet wonderful, wonderful people like yourselves. Everybody is different. We can be working with 2 companies doing very, very similar things. But the approach might be different. The destinations will be different. How we get there, the mindset is different. Okay, export communication review. Websites. Who's got websites? Come on, let's not be shy. Yes, great, wonderful. How many sell via their websites? Retail online? Anybody? There's a couple. Great. Export communication review. I call it our Mary Porter's product. Yeah? When Mary Porter's first started on television, she used to go into small boutiques and she would say, you need to know your audience. Know your tribe was her exact phrase. You need to know your audience and you need to target them. You want to be talking to them. So what we do with Export Communication Review, we've got a website guru. In the West Midlands, his name's Doug. And he's brilliant. He's also multilingual in Mandarin and Russian. His Russian's a lot better than mine, I have to say. He will come and spend half a day with a company and do a complete review. First off, he wants to know, what do you want to achieve? And what countries are you interested in? And then he'll look at the back of the website so that he'll see how it's written, where it's pointing. Do you own it, or does your website designer own it? Because an awful lot of us have had websites designed, but then we find out that we don't actually own it and somebody else is holding us ransom. Doug is a sole trader, so he doesn't make suggestions like, oh, we can do this, it'll only cost you £4,000. He knows what it means to get the most out of the money that you've got available. He will make your computer think it is in the country of your destination, of your dream. So, for example, let's take the Netherlands. He will make your computer think it's in the Netherlands. So what are the search terms that they use to find your product? Because they might be completely different to what we use here, even though the Dutch are very, very similar in their approach to trading, and their sense of humour is very similar to ours. So once we've established then what your search terms need to be in that country, then he can then work with you on the cultural aspect. For example, if you have a website and you are aiming at a Chinese population, To have the number 8 in it is very auspicious. To have the number 4 in it is not that auspicious. To dress it in white is even less auspicious. If you send a present to somebody in China, please don't ever give them a watch or a carriage clock, because the word for time and death is almost the same. So if you give somebody a watch or a clock and they're Chinese, you actually wish them an early death. They probably won't come back and buy very much from you afterwards. So these are the little things that Doug will go through. So he will help you with your website. He will help you to gear it towards your tribe. There is a cost for this service. Not everything that we do is free. The time with your international trade advisor is free, but the export communication review, half-a-day consultation and a report followed up is valued at £500. In the West Midlands, we discount that by 50%. So you pay £250. Now, for some ladies, that's a nice pair of shoes or a handbag. Believe me, if I'd got that money and it was shoes, handbag, website, I would choose the website, because that's going to bring you in more money. Then you can buy several pairs of shoes or handbags. So export communication review is one of my favourite things. And you don't have to be on any particular programme to get that. That is something that we can do for you standalone. And if you remember when we went back to the other one, that then becomes a significant assistance. So there are very different ways that we can work with you to help you achieve your goal. And this is why I've been alongside UKTI for as long as I have, because there hasn't been, in 18 years, I have not had a repeat day. It is totally, totally different every single day that I wake up. I think, right, okay, I'm going to see Fred today. What am I going to talk to him about? What's happened? And that's how we take it. Gateway to Global Growth is a program that we've got for more experienced exporters. They've been exporting between 2 and 10 years. So not for the startups, very much a more experienced role. A lot of support has now been put to Gateway to Global Growth. We are now able to offer up to £3,000 in rebate during the course of Gateway to Global Growth. That is exactly the same as we are able to offer under Passport to Export. In November 2012, Gateway to Global Growth attracted no rebate. Passport to Export offered £1,500. You can see what I mean about the government being serious about helping UK companies to export. And we do it on a local level. We do it with somebody who lives not too far from where you are based. I work with companies across the Black Country. They are very different. They are very diverse. Each of them have very different needs. I don't pretend that I know all of the answers. I think sometimes the best answer I can give somebody is, I don't know, I will go out and find out for you. One of the ways of finding out is to use our Overseas Market Introduction Service. It's that, remember when I went through the W's and the H, the bottoms on the bench? The OMIS is who? Who do I sell to? Who are my potential clients in this country? So OMIS will very nicely work with you to answer any question that you want. And therein lies the difficulty. I know of a company that went to Russia, went to Moscow, and they were consumer goods. And they said, we want to do a launch party. Can you help us do a launch party? Yes, said the team in Moscow. So what they did was a launch party in the British Embassy with the UKTI team on hand. They identified 200 potential buyers, sent them all out, you know, that nice little gilt-edged invite that sits on the mantelpiece, and you go, whoa, I've got an invite from the British Embassy. Sent them out to the buyers, got the confirmed, we will attend. The managing director paid an extra £500 for a buffet, and he thought, well, we'll see. You know, a few sandwiches, you know, curled at the edges, perhaps. We'll see. He arrived and was completely knocked off his feet. Because it was Moscow, he'd got smoked salmon and caviar and champagne as his buffet. He'd got 250 buyers in the room. He'd got the UKTI team on hand. This was all taking place in the space of the British Embassy in Moscow. These are addresses that don't come easy. We have the ability to open them to you, to help you to access them. He couldn't have done that. He couldn't have done that for £20,000 on his own, because the time of getting to those contacts to send the invites to in the first place, let alone ringing them and asking them to come, making sure they were coming, and then having an interpreter on hand to do the interpretation on the night. It cost him, now this is going back a long time, and nowadays I would say, let's treble it at least. It cost him £2,500 plus £500 for a buffet. But the doors that it opened for him, he couldn't have done on his own. That's one way of OMIS. Another way of doing OMIS, I had somebody who was a glass designer maker who wanted to sell into the Middle East. All he wanted were the names and phone numbers and contact details of 5 retail outlets, so he could go and visit them himself. They could do that. And everything in between. So we could provide you with a report on perhaps it's ceramics, perhaps it's greetings cards. I had a report done on greetings cards a few years ago. The British send more than any other country in the world. America do scrapbooking. That has now come over to this country. But if you want to have the reports on that industry, is there a self-tanning sector where you're going, or is it going to be a whitening culture? What's the ethos? What's the culture for women and their skin? What do they use on their hair? How do they? Is it a very small? I remember in South Africa, I took the beauty cosmetics industry down there, and one of the exhibitors is a company that recruits young ladies that have qualified as beauty therapists and puts them on cruise ships. And they'd got a queue at their stand of, they were working with schools down in South Africa to actually encourage these young ladies to go off on 9-month cruises. And after 9 months, they had to then go home for 3 months so that they actually saw their families. But then they could go and do it again. The awarding bodies in that sector, there are 5 international awarding bodies for beauty and massage and holistic therapists. 4 of them are British. That's a service that we export, that we are excellent at in this country. So of those, 4 of them are British and used to come with me overseas and liaise with the schools. And very often one of the ways that it would work is that the organisation would make a contract with the school. They would go and deliver, the school would deliver the training, but then a trainer would go out, an examiner would go out from the UK to do the exams. So you maintain the standard around the world. So our OMIS programme can do so much for you in asking the questions locally from our teams who are based in the country themselves. Now, I've covered a lot of information. It's all very vague because I don't know what you do. I have a guess that it might be consumer goods, but I can't be absolutely positive. I wouldn't expect anybody to tell me what you do in an environment like this. You might be competitors. Actually, you might be competitors that can complement each other. And therefore, we could actually introduce you, and you might find that if one of you do boxes and one of you do pens, you can then begin to work collaboratively. I love the word collaboration. UKTI works in collaboration with British industry to develop individual businesses to benefit the country. I couldn't do this job if I didn't get a buzz from it, and I do get a buzz from it. So thank you ever so much for your time.